Hello and welcome to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast. I'm Harriet Frew, eating disorder therapist, here to support you in overcoming disordered eating and finding peace with food. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here today. So today I'm going to talk about the 9 destructive signs of disordered eating and to think about what is normal eating anyway. Really hard to know, isn't it, I think? So how do you know in your heart if you have a healthy relationship with food and your body? And I think it's an acutely challenging question to answer because the culture normalizes extreme eating practices and a preoccupation with the body as the norm. So maybe you're listening and you feel, I don't have a full-blown eating disorder, or maybe you think, I'm not thin enough to properly struggle with food. But remember, 85% of people with eating disorders are not underweight. But I would argue that if your eating is causing you distress, it may be worth taking a closer look at it. So in this podcast, I'm going to explore different disordered eating behaviours and then suggest some thoughts about what a healthy relationship with food might look like. So 9 different ways that disordered eating can show up for you. Number 1, a preoccupation with food. So if you have a peaceful and healthy relationship with food, then you don't tend to obsess about eating or have continuous food thoughts. Yes, you might need to give thought to packing your lunch or getting something out the freezer for later. Maybe you're thinking about doing a grocery shop and having a vague plan for meals. But food is more like a gentle hum in the background of your life, a bit like breathing. But when you're deeply preoccupied with food, you're in a constant battle with your mind. You might be planning days ahead about what to eat or not. You may bring much judgment around making the right food choices. You may be delaying eating whilst pushing down hunger. You might be fixated on the cakes at work and noticing how much other people are eating. And you may fear losing control of your eating if you go to the shop and buy a chocolate bar. The food noise is blasting loudly on repeat. Number 2, restricting eating. When restricting food, you are in a perpetual battle with your body as you try to limit your food intake. Now, dietary restraint involves delaying eating, not eating enough, and or eliminating food groups. And that's when you don't have a diagnosed allergy or reason for doing this. Now, I appreciate some people do have to eliminate food groups, but for most of us, that is not necessary. So number 1 of the restrictive eating and dietary restraint categories, delaying eating. So this means putting off eating to reduce your overall calorie intake. So it could result in you having your first meal at lunchtime, with your evening meal happening at 9 p.m. each night, and you feel rigidly bound to eating times, and social eating brings undue uncertainty and anxiety. And I think this happens as well often. I think when people have anorexia nervosa, they're always delaying eating till later in the day. Often as well when people struggle with binge eating, they are worried about having breakfast, don't want to almost eat too much in the day, worried it's going to trigger a binge, so delay, and then often end up binging later anyway. Second one, not eating enough. So this involves counting calories, micromanaging food portions or groups. So calorie counting apps, fitness, dietary regimes have often normalized this behavior as healthy, but for many, this ultimately leads to undereating and a restrictive food intake. Next one is cutting out a major food group. So this involves eliminating or reducing a food group. So historically, back in the 80s, fats were the food demons in the Jane Fonda days of dietary restriction, whereas in recent years, carbohydrates have taken pride of place here, particularly with the advent of the wellness movement. For example, spiralized courgettes replacing pasta and bread becoming off limits. So I guess with all of those types of restrictive eating, delaying eating, not eating enough, cutting out a major food group, you override hunger cues and follow an external plan and rules rather than listening to your body. So you often feel good when you're sticking to the plan, but bad when you deviate from it and go off piste. Your worthiness becomes very dependent on your ability to follow the plan. And you also start to really lose that self-trust in yourself because you don't really trust your own hunger, fullness, you just don't really listen to it anymore. Number 3, binge eating. So binge eating is not simply scoffing an extra biscuit with your morning coffee break. Instead, it involves eating fast, an extremely large amount of food, so more than you would eat for lunch or dinner, and usually in secret. Now, binging can feel like a dissociative or out-of-body experience. You're fully present and grounded on earth, but it can feel as if a demon has swept over you and taken all rational decision-making away. So binge eating can be fleetingly euphoric and pleasurable, but it tends to be short-lived before guilt, shame, and self-loathing descend like a dark cloud. Plus, the physical consequences of feeling overfull are often deeply unpleasant and sometimes painful. Next one, purging. So maybe you make yourself sick through self-induced vomiting and it becomes a daily habit that you barely think about. For many of my clients, it's something they've done so frequently that they don't even consider it to be a kind of dangerous thing anymore, something that's harmful to them. It becomes something that they do quite unconsciously. However, purging is not a healthy practice. It impacts your teeth. You often have acid reflux, gastrointestinal issues, and you live with significant shame and secrecy with no one knowing about this part of your life. It can feel like just this horrible, horrible, horrible kind of secret that you're living with. Number 5, chewing and spitting. So you find yourself chewing but not swallowing, sometimes small and sometimes substantial quantities of food, and you might spend considerable time and money on this. And again, it's a really guilty secret that engulfs you in shame and isolation. And I know many of my clients that are chewing and spitting, it becomes a really addictive feeling, a really addictive type of habit, and can really sort of take over in quite a horrible way. But it's often, there's like an underlying restriction of your eating going on. Number 6, over-exercising. So you may feel that you have to earn food through activity. You track steps, go to different gyms to avoid the concern of others, and you compulsively monitor your movement from dawn till dusk. You may be frequently exhausted from the toll of over-exercise, and the thought of reducing it might bring up intense fears. Okay, number 7, compulsive weighing and or body checking with mirrors or photos. So maybe you monitor your body with precision, noticing and calculating any potential change or flux, and you find yourself seeking constant reassurance about your body and checking metrics on repeat. So when we become sort of almost compulsively obsessed with weighing or body checking, we get so preoccupied with the little details, the minor changes, and the minor changes feel overwhelming and really, really scary. And what happens when you are doing this deep dive into noticing things about your body, your feelings about your body start to be really up and down. They can oscillate wildly, and you can be terrified of your body changing. Okay, number 8, obsessed with healthy eating. So this is sort of orthorexia. So you strive for perfection with your eating and adhere to strict healthy rules. And this might include only organic, maybe gluten or dairy free, avoiding sugar or eliminating white carbohydrates. Now, although it's self-caring to prioritize health and wellness, this preoccupation with health escalates to disproportionate levels. So you spend hours obsessing about your body, your eating, and your body's actually flooded with cortisol at the thought of contaminating yourself with the wrong food. So your mental and physical health suffer consequently. So orthorexia is quite different from regular healthy eating. With orthorexia, actually, you're very, very stressed about eating and your body a lot of the time. And number 9, taking laxatives or diuretics. So maybe you rely on laxatives or diuretics to make you feel empty and clean, and this has become a regular practice. Initially, you may have relied on them for functional purposes as an occasional turn to, but now they have become part of daily life, and you feel that you need them to feel okay, and you find the dehydration that happens in your body lowers the weighing scale's number, and you're reluctant to let this go. So if you're struggling with any of these 9 disordered eating patterns, please know that you can escape these destructive habits, and it is entirely possible to heal, okay, however desperate you're feeling right now. But you may need to get some support along the way from a professional, and you can also take baby steps yourself to begin to shift your behaviours. So just for example, if you are mirror checking multiple times per day, even if you can start to reduce that and maybe stop taking photos of yourself on your phone, you will start to interrupt your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviours, and that is really helpful. So you can start to make little changes yourself. But also be kind and compassionate with yourself, as these disordered eating practices often are an unconscious coping for deeper issues. So what is normal eating anyway? Okay, I think everyone's normal is going to be slightly different, but here I'm going to share 7 of my thoughts. Okay, number 1, being food neutral. So eating is a neutral towards pleasurable experience. You might feel yum yum after enjoying a delicious cupcake or a crunchy green salad. Eating is not producing rampant feelings of guilt rippling through your day and lowering your mood. And eating is also not the pinnacle of joy on the pedestal either, at least not every single day. Okay, now if you are restricting your eating, you will always be looking forward and counting down the minutes and hours until you are able to eat. When you have a more neutral relationship with food, food is more in the background, in the gentle hum of life, rather than being this big preoccupation that evokes all these difficult emotions. And I think what's important to say here as well is that by being food neutral, it doesn't mean you have to eat donuts for breakfast, lunch and dinner. You can still honour health in all of this, but it's being far less black and white around food, being able to kind of exist much more in that kind of middle ground. And the paradox is, I guess, is that once we can exist more in a middle ground, we're probably going to eat less of the donuts and cakes and pizza and everything else in the first place. Okay, number 2, regular eating. So normal eating means eating regularly and including all food groups, unless you have a genuine intolerance. So it doesn't involve prolonged periods of restriction, delaying eating, denial, eating only orange foods on a Tuesday, some kind of random thing. And regular eating is just basic self-care in the same way that you might drink water regularly, in the same way that you might have a sleep routine, in the same way that you may get up and move your body and just kind of not stay sort of sitting in front of a screen for hours on end. Regular eating is just good, helpful self-care. Okay, number 3, satisfaction. So normal eating leaves you satiated and satisfied. So you're not still hungry after eating, and you're also not overfilling your tummy, your tank to punishing levels. And I guess having said this as well, there's no perfect eating, and a normal eater will regularly slightly undereat or overeat with a knowing trust that the body will balance things out. So it's a bit of an imperfect science, but the more you are sort of just tuned in and working with your body, it becomes more like breathing. When I eat these days, I'm not really thinking massively after a meal. Am I full enough? Have I eaten enough? It's just a much more intuitive thing. But that has only come with lots and lots of practice and lots of building of self-trust after recovering from an eating disorder. Number 4, social eating. So normal eating means socialising with friends at a birthday meal without anxious scanning of menus or bringing your own healthy food box on the side. And you can be present in conversations without calorie counting or food rules distracting you. So you're in the moment. You don't have to kind of worry or calculate days ahead what you're allowed to eat and not eat. You're just kind of much more there in the moment. Number 5, no food rules. So normal eating involves an absence of rules and restrictions. You may still have a self-care structure around eating, honouring your health. However, there are no hard and fast lines drawn in the sand. So this means that a normal eater is far less prone to, I've blown it so I might as well eat everything in sight, as they have no wagon almost to fall off in the first place. Okay, so yeah, and I just really want to stress in a way, no food rules really doesn't mean that you have to just be really chaotic and random with food. I definitely still have a very, very self-caring structure with my eating that I implement day to day, but I can be flexible and go off piste. But the fact that I have the structure in place really, really helps. Number 6, weight. Normal eating involves your weight remaining broadly stable. And a normal eater probably won't pay much attention to weight anyway, as there's a deeper level of self-trust and natural attunement to the body's nutritional needs. Now, I haven't weighed myself for donkey's years, but I can still fit into all my clothes. I'd have a high level of self-trust now about my body. Now, I'm sorry if you can hear someone trimming a hedge or something in the background. Someone is blasting their tool in my close. So apologies for that if you could hear that. Number 7, background. With normal eating, food blurs into the background of life rather than taking centre stage. Eating may bring immense amounts of pleasure and joy, but is not at the forefront of decisions or taking up buckets of emotional energy. With food in its rightful place, you have greater focus and clarity for projects you love, meaningful relationships, and inspiring hobbies or life adventures. Your values remain in focus without everything revolving around food and body. So if you're struggling with disordered eating, it can feel incredibly challenging to move towards a healthier relationship with food. And it can be deeply bewildering to navigate this journey with the media bombardment of new dietary regimes and body overhauls inundating your psyche 24/7. But it's never too late to become more attuned to your body and to develop a healthy relationship with food. Be patient and compassionate with yourself in this process. Okay, hope you found this podcast enjoyable. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you being here. If you're not following me already on Instagram, do seek me out at the Eating Disorder Therapist _ and for further support with your relationship with food, do go to the eatingdisordertherapist.co.uk, and if you want to have written articles of the podcast, please go to my Substack and you can subscribe for free in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to sharing another podcast episode with you very soon.